Hi guys, welcome to another edition of Live from the Roadhouse podcasts, and I'm interviewing people from season 3. Also hope to later on talk to some of the original cast members as well from way back, and some of them who obviously came back in the return as well. But here we have an actor who played a newer character in season 3 and became part of the mythos, as it were, and everyone's been talking about the Woodsman, and this is one of the Woodsmen here, who was actually the first one we saw in episode 2. I'm delighted to welcome Stewart Strauss. How are you, Stu?
I'm great, Frank, and thanks for having me. I truly appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Right, Stu, I'm just going to go back a wee bit before we talk about Twin Peaks. You worked as a DJ, and you also have dabbled in sound engineering as well. Could you tell us something about that?
Well, I started out in life as a musician, very, very young. My first instrument was cello, and I skipped forward, quite a few years. I went back to school in around 1980 to study music, and I'd been playing, like I say, for previous, 20 some odd years before that. But I went back to study, get more serious, and part of those classes involved, recording, engineering, and so, I got in the studio on both sides. Some of the projects meant writing and recording your own demos and bringing in charts, a studio-type atmosphere, and the others, of course, were behind the console. That led to, my main interest was playing at that time. But it did lead to DJing when I was at Pasadena City College. The TV studio, I went back to school at this point, which was in the late 80s, around 1990, 89, 90, to learn TV broadcasting, behind the camera. And the radio station, which was an NPR affiliate, was the next room over. So the radio station was live, 24/7. And while I was waiting for class to start, whatever time of day it was, in the TV classroom, live studio, but used as a classroom, I'd always hear whatever was on the air, and got to be, friendly with the DJs, and got more interested, and started interning for the program director there, Larry Mantle, who's been on the air with one of the premier talk shows in Southern California for 30 plus years now, called Air Talk. And I'm talking about KPCC FM, again, an NPR affiliate, Pasadena, Southern California. So they had some pretty strict standards. And I managed to get on the air when they were, playing a big band in swing era music during the day, which is all about, 1935 to 1946. Benny Goodman, Duke Ellington, etc.
Yeah.
And you had to learn your stuff. So that's where I became a DJ and came into it from that base. It wasn't about being a boss jock. It was more about knowing and loving the music, That led to, later on working at a couple other stations to Reno, where I worked at a AAA radio station for a few years and loved that. AAA is pretty much adult album rock, it covers a lot of ground. And had my way of it there, or way with it, for quite some time, until that all changed. I was replaced by automation. At which time I became a mobile DJ.
Yeah.
And that was all about, running, your own sound system,
yes.
And
yeah.
emceeing at weddings and parties and all of the above. So now you're kind of taking all, and paid a lot better, by the way, than being a regional radio
Sure. Yeah.
So, anyway, I did that for the next several years until the recession, when our housing market crashed here, which was around 2007, where the wedding destination business really started to take a hit, at least in Lake Tahoe, and that brought me back to LA.
Yeah.
Have I answered your question at all, Frank, or have I just been rambling?
You have. Yeah, brilliantly, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it was kind of a full circle, and now I'm, practicing my guitar every day again. But yeah, so I've been a broadcaster. I've been on both sides. I was, after I studied TV broadcasting, I actually worked in a studio in public access television for the Unified School District. I actually first went to school for the college I was attending, or went to work for the college I was attending, and on the radio station at, and and ended up working again for the school district later on. Spent a few years there, then worked as an online video editor for a while for a new satellite network, then moved back to Lake Tahoe, where I'd lived through the middle and late 70s, and moved back up there to ski bum again, which I did in the middle 70s, and ended up, finding this radio station in Reno that I absolutely fell in love with. It's called KTHX. Not all of these stations can be heard worldwide, with internet. And I do listen to the X, as it's called. It's 100.1 in Reno, FM. And again, a AAA station that I just loved being. It was a music freak stream. I got to play all kinds of different formats, meet all kinds of people, go to shows, MC shows. It was a dream job, while it lasted, but like most dreams, you do wake up at some point, or somebody shakes you and wakes you.
Yeah. One or two of the other Twin Peaks actors are involved in this series, and I know you have been. And it's called I'm Dying Up Here.
Oh, yeah, on Showtime.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
And John Piricello mentioned it. I think Nicole Leberter mentioned it. Yeah.
And Robert Forster.
Quite a few of you, yeah.
Yeah, well, Robert Forster was in the pilot and was outstanding. Probably had the most dramatic of all the roles, or the most sourpuss of all of them. And quite good, as always.
Yes, yeah.
And then Nicole was featured in one of the later or middle episodes. It was a 10-episode season, and she was outstanding. I mean, the first time I saw her, I didn't realize it was her at all. I mean, not at all. Considering I only really knew her as Daria.
Yeah.
And and it was later on that when I saw her credit. And I started thinking, well, wait a minute, I've seen every episode, and all of a sudden a light bulb went off. Was that Nicole? And I went back and watched it. Yeah, outstanding performance.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like one very, very good scene. She goes through a lot of emotion. Anyway.
Can you tell us a little bit about that series for people who are not familiar with it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And what you played in it. I believe you had quite a recurring role as a character called Randy.
I had a regular background role. I was one of the comics at Goldie's, which was a nightclub that Melissa Leo ran, her character. And I mean, it was really the story of the coming of the golden age, the last golden age of comedy, which was in the 1970s here in Los Angeles, and it evolved in real life. It evolved around the Comedy Store to begin with, the Improv, which opened soon after the Comedy Store, and the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Johnny came out, brought his crew from New York in 1972. The Comedy Store, which had been Ciro's in the past, and then by chance, more or less, this was more by chance, it started as comedy club. Sammy and Mitzi Shore in, like I say, it was in all around 1972, this all kind of converged. Sammy was a traveling comic. He played the bigger rooms in Las Vegas, East Coast, so, he was, from the Catskills, but, played Jersey, played Vegas, Tahoe, all those places, and for headliners, big shows. So when he was in town, which wasn't often, he wanted to have a place for, to hang out, bring in his comic friends, things like that. And they got a hold of this club that was Ciro's previously, right on the Sunset Strip, can't ask for a more ideal location.
Oh, yeah.
Or at least, for the zip code wise anyway.
Yeah.
And just by chance, he was going on the road, and Mitzi had this brainstorm, his wife at the time, Pauly Shore's mother, by the way, her parents, but Pauly was, wee lad at the time. So she decided to kind of use the room as a showcasing place for up-and-coming talent. And again, like I say, Johnny Carson had just come to Los Angeles, so his talent scouts would be there, would show up.
Yeah.
All the young comics that were in town, and there wasn't an overload yet at the time. There were all the people that came to perform on the shows that were recorded here, and of course, there's a lot of venues in the area as well. But so as it turns out, and this had nothing to do with me being on the show in a way, but my first roommate happened to be the youngest comic who was ever on the Tonight Show in that period. His name is Alan Bursky, and this was in 1972. And he came directly from the Comedy Store. Now, he's from New York, and he'd been working at this since he was 13, but he was one of the very first. Now, one of his closest friends was Freddie Prinze.
Oh, yeah.
Who became Chico of Chico and the Man, who later committed suicide, after a few years. But this guy shot up like a rocket and then came down like a bad launch, and unfortunately. But Alan was my first roommate. We met at community college here, LA Valley College, and I was maybe in my second year of theater classes, and I was directing a one-act play when he first kind of came in the department. I cast him in it. He was just trying to get some acting chops, to be ready for what really was coming very rapidly in his future. So anyway, he was fresh from New York. He was out here with his family and his brother Rick, and his family befriended me right away. Actually, the first time I went to his apartment, his family's apartment, was the night he was on the Tonight Show.
Uh-huh.
And this was the first time that I'd ever mingled with a whole room full of established and people that were getting established.
Yeah.
So anyway, in fact, that very evening, David Brenner, who was at Alan's apartment, who was pretty big time at the time, was, very much, took to me, or realized I didn't know anybody there. And we sat and talked for, like the whole evening. We watched Alan, and Alan killed it on the show, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm dying up here, he killed it, so,
Yeah.
He knocked it out of the ballpark,
Yeah.
more or less.
Yeah.
Great set. Jerry Lewis was a guest, and he had Jerry Lewis busting up. Alan had offers the next day, immediately. Tonight Show was the biggest thing you could do.
Oh, it was, yeah.
End of story,
Yeah. Skipping, well, we're kind of, we're overlapping in a sense, because, as you said, that Twin Peaks had just wrapped, I think, when you were working on this show. But getting on to Twin Peaks, Stewart, I'm just curious about the casting process, what you had to do, what was involved in that, and getting into the new show.
Well, I first saw a listing on a subscription service, an online subscription service that a lot of actors and extras use here in Southern California, probably other places as well, called LA Casting. And casting directors will use it freely to put up whatever they're looking for, and anything from films to TV to commercials, and whatever type they're looking for, whatever needs they have to fill. So and then I get emails that fit my description, generally anyhow.
Yeah.
And then it's just up to me whether I submit or not. And I can submit for 100 a day and might hear back from one a week, if I'm lucky some weeks. So anyway, so that's what it was. it was untitled, didn't say anything about Twin Peaks or David Lynch or Woodsman. Just more or less character types they were looking for with facial hair, longer hair, probably more middle-aged. And I submitted, so they saw my current picture at the time. And I didn't know it yet, but it was a casting director, Christopher Gray, this is his name, Christopher Gray Casting, who I'd worked for previously on other shows, going back, maybe at that point, going back 5 years, So he knew I had a track record, he knew that I'd be reliable and that sort of thing. If he suggested me, and I would imagine he at least, gave me a thumbs up to David.
Yeah.
And so the next thing I knew is I had a message from Christopher that they would like to see a short video, just me saying my name and hello to David Lynch, And by this time, I believe they used the word Woodsman. They used Twin Peaks, and David Lynch's name as well, but they hadn't really used him in context.
Yes.
Or Christopher did. I didn't really quite get that they were remaking Twin Peaks yet.
Yeah.
Or coming 25 years later. Didn't really follow that. It almost seemed more like he was letting me know who David Lynch was. And I was thinking maybe this is a project called The Woodsman.
Right.
And I, of course, not knowing what a Woodsman was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I sent him the shortest video possible. Just kept it real. Just simply did say my name. And I didn't go to nearly the trouble we just went through for this interview. And I want to thank you for that, Brian. But I just, said, hello, David. I'm Stewart Strauss. Stop, take,
That was it.
a few times, to make sure I wasn't sweating or spitting.
Yeah.
Something like that. And just submitted it. And, next thing I knew, I had the gig. So, and they did talk about it being reoccurring, to sort of find out if I'd be available for that. And of course, and I was just so happy to see David Lynch's name.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, David Lynch is asking for video. I mean, most background roles, at least to that time, to that point, they'd never asked for a video.
No.
Or if I don't remember submitting one time for a background role, a live video. That's similar.
Yeah.
For speaking roles, yes, but not for
usually just a 10 photograph, usually, isn't it? If they're looking for specifics.
They just see your pictures online. Whatever pictures you put up there is what they're going to see, and hopefully they're seeing something current.
Yeah.
So that's where it started, and it's been gangbusters ever since, I suppose.
Yeah.
Other than that 1.5 year waiting period,
Yes, that was that must have been pretty difficult to sit on for that long, and not say anything,
Yeah, to say the least, it was.
Yeah.
But I more than understood it, and the more time went on, and as they were rolling out this Showtime here in the U.S., and David and Mark Frost were rolling out their promotion for the show, it became really obvious to me. Or fairly obvious, it took some time to become obvious, that they were not going to show you anything from this new season. They were keeping our characters secret. They'd already, on the IMDb website, or at some point, they published a list of 200 and some odd cast members.
Oh, yeah.
And, which was impressive to say the least. But, none of the Woodsmen, although Robert Broski was probably listed at the time, but not as a Woodsman.
No.
His name.
That's right. Yeah.
So, but they hadn't, put any of us up, but, we were also uncredited extras, so we weren't expecting credit unless they were going to, do something different,
Yeah.
But just the same, so we weren't mentioned there. The promos that Showtime was starting to roll out, and I was already subscribing to it, or at least seeing what they were doing. Like I say, it became pretty obvious that they weren't, showing new footage. They weren't showing anything relevant to season 3, at least not yet.
Yeah.
and that made it easier, you know. But yeah, it was kind of tough, and every now and then I'd see someone leak something out, someone that I knew, or someone that I had no idea of, who ended up being like one of the Woodsmen up in Washington, who I didn't know existed. But yeah, some people just have really hard time, you know, being off social media.
Yeah.
You know, when there's something exciting, or, you know, this was an exciting secret to hold.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I managed. You know, I was able to do it. I mean, even, hey, look, when you got in touch with me shortly after part 2, right? After the premiere of the show.
Yeah, yeah.
You didn't know I was a Woodsman. I didn't say Woodsman. There was not once that I ever said I was a Woodsman until after part 8, when Robert Broski had that in the credits.
That's what
and I was interviewed by David Lynch, Italia, davidlynch.it, in Rome, Italy, a fan site there.
Yeah.
That was shortly after the premiere had been on, and not once was Woodsman. They just called me the man in jail, you know.
That's it, yeah. That's all we had to go on, yeah. Yeah, we didn't know who you were.
Yeah, I didn't choose that moniker, but I gladly wore it, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have much choice in the matter. Yeah, I was just glad to be recognized, you know, period.
Yeah. That was funny enough, the next question about that scene, because, as you say, that point we didn't see any more Woodsman than you. You know, we did, and so none of us had any handle on what your character was at that point. You know, when we were watching it that time.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. You know, in hindsight, Stewart, when you first appeared there, did you have any idea how that would take off, you know, the Woodsman characters and so on later on? Did you think how people would react to that and stuff, you know?
Well, for one, I had no idea of the context, you know, when any of the scenes would be used, how they'd be used, where they'd be used in the storyline, nor did I have a clue as to what the storyline was about. None.
Yeah.
You know. Other than the film, than the scenes that I was in, and I worked 6 days, so approximately 6 scenes, although a couple of them were maybe shot over 2 days.
Yeah.
So, essentially, I'm in 4 episodes, and I believe I appear maybe in 5 scenes. Whatever, it doesn't
I think
matter.
so. Yeah.
I'm not counting at that point, but they were the only scenes I had any knowledge of. And again, being completely out of context, and the only dialogue in any of those scenes that you ever heard was "Got a light."
Yeah.
3 words, and that was in part 8, where you didn't see me in that scene anyway. But I was there for that. Other than that, the rest of our scenes had no dialogue, so there was no need to read a script.
That's right. Yeah.
Sides.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we were pretty much in the dark, and it didn't matter a bit. I loved just whatever the direction was, with the makeup, hair, and wardrobe. That was a motivating force, and David's direction, you know, that was it. So
I was going to ask you about that, Stuart, actually. You're neatly bringing me on to each question, which is interesting. But the next thing was David's directing style. How did you find that? I mean, I dare say this is obviously the first time you ever worked with David. So yeah. I'm just curious as to how his approach differed to other directors you've worked with. What's his kind of like his mood on set and style?
I can't speak much to his direction, as you know.
Yeah.
But what I can say is he's very exacting. He knows what he wants right from the beginning. I mean, there was no real question marks in interpretation. You know, well, maybe that's not the right word, because interpretation still kind of belongs to the individual. But the action, the posturing, the posture that we took, the kind of contorted body gestures and movement, things like that, that was all David, of course.
Yeah.
Other aspects were, I mean, I feel like, you know, what I brought like to the jail cell scene was my eyes. I mean, I'd been working on that myself, and just, tried it. They liked it, and so that's how that came about pretty much.
Yeah.
But what I liked most about David's direction, and I would have to, put it in the top 1 percentile of all directors I've worked with.
Yeah.
And is the spontaneity of his direction, the being in the moment.
Yes.
Very much in the now. Because we didn't have dialogue, and that gave him an extra amount of freedom with the megaphone or just using his voice, where he could pretty much call out things, call out action, new action, or, refining the action while the camera was rolling, or cameras were rolling. So I liked that. I liked it a lot, and I liked the way he set things up. Personally, I enjoy being active, so most of our scenes were active.
Yeah.
We saw, like, out in the forest where you saw a bunch of woodsmen running.
Yeah.
Or where we're circling. I was circling Ray in Part 8 early on after he shot Thad Cooper. Those were physically, active scenes. Part 17, that's 3 of us in the sheriff's office working on Coop, excising Bob or taking Bob out of him, I guess. That's the way it played out before Freddie gives him one with his garden club. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, so those were all very active things, and which again I really like a lot.
Yeah.
Moving and then not moving, and then just telling a story with your eyes or whatever it may be. So kind of had the best of both there.
Oh yeah.
But again, it was usually the energy level afterwards, and the confidence level afterwards.
Yeah.
With David was unique, to other directors.
Yeah.
And I've had plenty of backslapping and handshaking and, congrats from, directors that I've worked with and an impressive list,
Yeah.
But there was just something special and different and uplifting about working with David Lynch that was, again, quite unique, Plus, in all honesty, he did feature me and Christian, and of course Robert Broski got the break of a lifetime with him.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But he featured us to the point more so and trusted in us and me more than other directors had in the past. So that meant a world to me. The world to me.
Yeah.
And which also built helped boost my confidence. And so, like I say, anything I did after that, even concurrently or currently at the same time, because I didn't work on, God, my 6 days on Twin Peaks were stretched out over 5 months. So in that 5-month period, I probably worked on a half dozen different things.
Yes, yeah.
At least, maybe more.
Yeah.
So I'd say it made me better in everything I did thereafter, or will ever do thereafter. Not that I'm done learning. Plenty more learning.
Oh yeah, you never stop learning. That's for sure. But your fellow woodsman, the guys you work with, there were several of them. What do you remember about the kind of working with those fellas and the camaraderie on set with them? And had you met them before doing Twin Peaks? Or
Christian Calloway was really the only person that I knew, and kind of a bond or common bond between several of us woodsmen, because Christian had worked with some of the other guys before, if not all of them. So he had at least an acquaintance with all of the woodsmen, that worked in Southern California, I should say.
Yeah.
There was another group in Washington State.
Yes, yeah.
But he was the only one I knew. We had worked together at least a few times leading up to Twin Peaks. So we were already becoming friends. not that we were buddy-buddy. I don't think we'd ever hung out to that point. But we'd worked together enough times.
Yeah.
That I believe we drove together. I'm pretty sure I drove him out, drove him to location on our very first day. You know, he was having some work done on his car or something like that at the time. So, so we knew each other. Most of the other guys, I really didn't know. You know, I've worked with Gabriel Yanis, or Lane, since, who was, we had a few scenes together. And I just recently met David Niker, who is on the staircase with me and Gabriel. That's the three of us in part 11.
Yeah.
In the stairwell in that very short but meaningful scene.
Yes.
I was on top, David right below me, and Gabriel, I believe, below him. So that was a fun one to film as well. But just recently, I ran into David. And I ran into Gabrielle maybe back in July or September on a job for a couple of days. And I told him all about all of this going on. And he's not too much into social media.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Anyway. But yeah, so he was the only one I really knew.
I just quickly wanted to ask you about the scenes with Kyle. How did you find working with Kyle?
Oh, I loved working with Kyle. Kyle's personality is what you see is what you get, and you can't ask for more.
Yeah.
I mean, really, he's so cordial, for one. Very much the way he is with everybody. The way you've seen him is probably the way it was to work with him.
Yeah.
He's a hard worker, needless to say, because when we were, the scenes that we had together, he was either getting shot. Well, he did. He got shot both times.
He did. That's right.
Yeah. Part 8, and then Lucy shot him later on.
Yeah.
So, so he'd just been shot in both cases. So he had to be in that outfit, lying on a floor, having 3 strangers, basically, at least early on, 3 strangers, all over his body. And in 17, which was the only time I was one of the 3 on him, I was right there at his pant line, right?
Yeah.
I was down. But, no, he's a trooper and a sport.
Yeah.
And the first one willing and ready to do the next take, or do it again, or whatever that David would ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciated that in a big way. Again, the way just his demeanor, on set is very welcoming, respectful, and again, just a pleasure to be around.
Yeah, that's great, man. I was going to ask you, ask you what your favourite Lynch film is, or have you got, or even if you've got several of them. Or?
Well, I don't know. I would go back to The Elephant Man's been on my mind a bunch lately.
Yeah.
I'd probably go back to that. Blue Velvet certainly had a big effect when I saw it. Wild at Heart, that was getting a little too violent for my taste, I suppose. But, probably appreciate it more now. So almost any of them, I was a fan, but not a super fan. I still haven't seen all his work. I'd be lying if I told you I had.
Yeah.
Oh, I did, I think I started with Eraserhead, though, when the Warehouse and other stores just opened up that rented VHS and beta tapes,
Oh yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
VCR. Eraserhead was one of the very first indie films, if not the very first indie film I ever rented.
Yeah.
And that was off of what I'd been hearing about David Lynch. And again, Elephant Man, was just knockout. Loved John Hurt from that moment on.
Oh yeah.
So probably right there, Oh, and Blue Velvet, was beyond most description, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah.
My last question, Stu, is what do you think is the enduring appeal of Twin Peaks?
Oh, golly. There's got to be several, I would imagine, but probably that every question leads to another question. I mean, there's so little resolution, but a story that just kind of keeps you, or stories that keep you inside of it. There's just so many elements. For me, a big part of it is the absurd. I love absurd comedy. Probably, makes me laugh more than many other forms. I hate cheap shots at love stories as a series is starting to fail, and all of a sudden the two protagonists or whoever it is become an item and end up getting married and having kids, and that's the end of the show for me always.
Yeah.
So, the fact that Twin Peaks doesn't, cheapen itself in any way, regardless of, Coop's romances. I mean, it keeps moving forward.
Yeah.
I loved 18. I mean, I didn't right away, but I felt like for whatever reason, I felt like I had a grip on it pretty much all the way through.
Yeah.
Even though I had to watch many things twice and I read so many recaps of things. So looking back at it now, I'm just thinking to myself, oh yeah, I understood it, but I had help along the way.
Yeah.
But 18 is it kind of went into another story, another time and place, and it did. I thought that was something else, So I did. I mean, like a lot of fans of the original show, I got a kick out of seeing, like when Audrey Horne, finally showed up, when Julie Cruz finally showed up. I mean, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a sentiment that came through.
Sure.
Immediately seeing them on the screen.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't really care much about their love stories early on, or the Leo, Shelley thing, all that. Just wherever the story was going, whatever they were doing with it, was fine with me.
Yeah.
And loved so many of the new characters, and so many of, well, I know it's not really what you asked. I don't know how many times I've probably not answered, just asked, but seeing so many new characters and seeing some of my favorite actors and actors I'd never known, from Amy Shear to John Puricello, but the actors that we did know and love, me personally, Tim Roth, Jennifer Jason Leigh, I watched both of them just read the phone book back and forth, no worries,
Yeah.
So seeing them and Ashley Judd, Richard Chamberlain, and just on and on and on, the list, John Savage, so many actors, right, that did cameos or short, little bits.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a thing. The endearing part, I don't know. It's good and bad. It's good against evil. But it's like good never really quite wins, I suppose. I don't know. But
not in the way we would think, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Sure happy about it.
Yeah. You're happy that you were part of it, that's the thing. Yeah.
Of course. And, if there is a fourth season, if they decide to do more and, want to have me back, I'm there with open arms, regardless.
Sure.
Regardless of when it is, as long as I'm capable of getting to a set, I'll be there.
Yeah.
But if there is no more Twin Peaks and it never comes back, as I'm sure that there will be something else that David Lynch is going to be doing, or even if he doesn't, but if he does, they know that, I'm there in a heartbeat no matter what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm more than grateful for the experience. And at some point, well, probably when the Blu-ray comes out, which is next month, right? Less than a month now.
I believe so, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably watch it again in full context, or from beginning to end. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they, have, what the bonus features are.
That should be interesting, yeah.
Yeah, I did read on in Entertainment Weekly, I believe, a little snippet they had, that on the Blu-ray version, not the DVD because it wouldn't hold as much info,
yeah.
But on the Blu-ray version, there'll be something like 6 hours of extra bonus material. That's quite a bit.
That's quite a lot, yeah.
And I will say this, that, probably no secret either, but if it is, I'm letting it out. I don't think it is. There was always a video camera rolling when we weren't documenting, staying fairly close to David, if not always with David. So there would be, how they're going to use whatever footage or, other things they have. Of course, I don't know.
Yeah.
But like every other narcissist, I kind of want to see what they do have of us. Just in holding or, off the cuff.
Yeah.
Candid footage.
Candid stuff would be fascinating, yeah.
Yeah.
I like stuff like that, yeah. So that's great, Stu. Thank you. I just wanted to thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it, Frank. It's been great getting to know you a little bit. I do appreciate you being in touch as often as you have.
Oh, you're very welcome. And I hope you guys enjoyed this too. I hope at some stage to be interviewing more people connected with season 3. So in the meantime, Stu, thanks very much indeed. And thank you guys for listening. Take care.